final installment of Jenny Han's The Summer I Turned Pretty. We are ending with We'll Always Have Summer. And in this novel, Belly is getting married. But who is she marrying? Jeremiah or Conrad? Jeremiah or Conrad? She is marrying Jeremiah. It seems after the events of the previous book, she and Jeremiah got together, and it's not really smooth sailing. What happens? And my biggest overarching issue here is that these two have no chemistry. I think the other problem is that we never really get to see them as a couple. Like, we never get to see their honeymoon phase. We never get to see what makes them a couple. We knew that they were best friends. We knew that Jeremiah is a good-looking dude. We knew that Jeremiah liked Belly. But we never got to see them together, especially because her heart always belonged to Conrad. And that is something that, even though I stopped watching the television series after like 3 episodes, you got the idea that there was some chemistry between the two. And we don't ever get to see any of that in this series. So I thought it was a little off-putting to all of a sudden have them have been in a relationship for 2 odd years. And then events happen. But before I get into that, can I say, hallelujah, praise the Lord, we finally got some Conrad. I was going to say at one point in a previous review about these multiple POVs, and my initial opinion when I was much, much younger, because first book is Belly, second book is Belly and Jeremiah, third book is Belly and Conrad. And I remember thinking, man, I wish We'll Always Have Summer had been Belly, Jeremiah, and Conrad. I still don't think that was too bad of an idea. However, it actually didn't bother me that it was only Conrad. But I thought it could have helped develop things if we'd had both boys' perspective, because there is a rivalry between the two. There has been a rivalry between the two over Belly essentially since the first book. It's just that Jeremiah's been more overt about it, and Conrad has been a liar, liar, pants on fire. But we don't actually know if he's a liar, liar, pants on fire, if he really doesn't like Belly, and for some reason he's just like humoring her or something. Strong opening, okay? The opening of this book is the only time that I ever felt like I got to see Jeremiah and Belly together as a couple and making sense, making me root for them. When it comes to the two brothers, I'm like 97% Team Conrad. I like that bad boy, the dude that like she wants desperately but cannot have, but we know is the one for her. But Jeremiah is the one who treats her the way she should be treated. So I'm okay with them being together. I really am, because like, what if Conrad is a pipe dream and he's never gonna happen? She deserves better than that. We open up, they're in college together. It is the end of the year. She goes to a party at his frat house. They're having a good time. She gets beer on her dress. She goes to the bathroom to clean it up, and what does she hear? A conversation between 2 girls talking about how one of the girls hooked up with Jeremiah. Sorry, it just makes me laugh, because one of my biggest questions when I read Lauren Conrad's LA Candy series was, what does hook up mean? Initially, like, we met this rival briefly, in which Belly sees Jeremiah talking to her, and she introduces us to this girl is so cute, and she could be a rival for Jeremiah's affections, except Belly knows that there is no rival for his affections when it comes to her. Therefore, this girl is not a rival. But there is that seed of doubt planted as to, is she or is she not a rival? So now we hear them talking about this, and it's a little ambiguous, because what does hooking up mean? And are they actually talking about Jeremiah? Who knows? Yes, it turns out that Jeremiah cheated on Belly, or at least had a fling with this girl the previous spring break or something. And this made me giggle, because I don't know if Han was trying to reference Friends, but Belly and Jeremiah were on a break If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. Put it in the comments below. Belly, like, she gets very upset with him. He admits that not only did they hook up, but they slept together. Belly is furious, rightfully so. And the problem I had here, I liked that she said, well, we were on a break, or he said, we were on a break, and she said, but you knew it wasn't real. You knew we were gonna get back together. And this is where I was like, are we gonna do the whole Ross and Rachel thing? And no, Jeremiah, he admitted, he said, yeah, you know, I never doubted that we would be broken up, that we weren't really broken up. But what angered me is that he can't own up to the fact that, because I love the point she makes where he's essentially saying, well, it's not personal. And she's like, but it was personal to me. And he cannot own up to the fact that he essentially didn't think about her at all. He admits that, yes, he didn't really want her to come on this trip anyways. So what? They were broken up, and even though he knew that it wasn't a true breakup, he was going to sleep with this girl, despite the fact that what it would do to Belly. And I wanted, like, this is what I wanted when she was angry with him, for them to dive into that. We need to address the fact that it was not okay what he did, and that Belly needs to be able to stand up for herself and be like, I was not okay with it. You need to admit you did something wrong. And even though he admits, yes, I shouldn't have done it, he doesn't admit to the greater issue of, it's not her fault. And what he did was going to hurt her, and he should have thought about that, and he didn't. He thought about himself and what he wanted. She ignores him for a couple of days. Then she decides, okay, yeah, I'll talk to him. And the vindictive side of me is like, no, cut him off at the knees and never look back. Like, why are we entertaining this? Like, So she opens the door, and then he proposes to her, and she's like, okay. This is really where things start to go downhill for me, because and I never realized how old I was until I read this particular installment, and I said, I'm no longer a teenager. For all of you youngsters out there, this is a great book, okay? Even for all you oldsters like me, this is not a bad book if you're looking at it from the point of view of an 18 or 19-year-old. But I definitely, this read-through related to the parents, or that parental figure, as to how Belly should respect herself, and how, like, this situation should not have gone anywhere that it actually went. But for her, I totally understand why she made her decisions. But for me, I was like, in another overarching issue I have had, or complaint that I have had, is Belly needs to stand firm. She never learns. Like, I don't feel like she had any growth whatsoever from the moment she was 15 in the first book to this book, because she never chooses anything for herself. She never makes a decision and stands firm on her ground. She never learns how to be an adult. And that was very irritating to me, because I was just like, why am I rooting for her? She was actually quite boring, because she couldn't stand up for herself. The only time she stood up for herself was the very beginning of the book, and then she accepts Jeremiah's proposal. And it felt like a juvenile thing, which it's supposed to be a juvenile thing. The whole book is about her accepting this proposal, and we're all like, should you have done that? Now they are engaged, and they're going to keep it a secret for a second because she wants to wait to tell their families. When they do tell their families, it does not go over well. They go to cousins because they are going to be honoring Susanna, who is Jeremiah and Conrad's mother, who died in between the first and second books. We're waiting for Conrad. Conrad ends up not showing up. We realize it's because we get into his perspective. His flight had been delayed. He's now out in California. They are in the East Coast, like in the Chicago area or Illinois area. And Belly is obviously not over Conrad. And again, that's where I'm just like, I do not understand why she is engaged to this boy when she doesn't love him the way she should love him. Not that she doesn't love him, but can she honestly go through the rest of her life married to Jeremiah while pining for Conrad? Or are they going to have to avoid each other for the rest of their lives? These are the things that I wish Belly would come to terms with, but she keeps saying, oh, I'm over him, I'm into Jeremiah, only to turn around and be like, I'm not over him. Should I be marrying Jeremiah? She should have worked through these issues in the first, or preferably the second book. Like, that's what the second book should have been about. And in this book, it's all about Jeremiah until there's a moment where she's like, oh my gosh, I'm not over him. She makes the decision, the book ends. For me, that's how the series should have gone. It doesn't. They are at the thing for Susanna, and then they go to dinner. The two of them break the news, and the family is not happy. The mother is like, I'm not coming to this wedding. His father's like, I don't agree with it. I don't know what to do about it. Let's all talk to Conrad. We get these perspectives from Conrad where it was a little unfulfilling, because we finally realize that, yeah, he has true feelings for Belly. This was a bit of a cop-out where he says that his actions in the second book were all fueled because with the death of his mother, he could not have loved Belly the way she was supposed to be loved. It didn't jive for me because that's not how he treated her. I could see instances where that's a good motivating factor, but I felt overall he was just playing games with her, and he's too immature to admit that he actually likes her because he likes stringing her along. He likes the attention. So I wished we'd gotten more explanation from him as to more of his behaviors versus really kind of how he behaved in the second book. Belly goes home, gets in a massive fight with her mother, and she leaves and she goes to Cousins, which turns out this is where Conrad is staying. They do manage to avoid each other. We get Conrad's perspective saying he's doing it on purpose. We get Belly's perspective being like, he's avoiding me, but is he like really avoiding me, or do we keep missing each other? Then they start to reconnect because Jeremiah is a flake. And this is when I'm like, why is Belly with him? You really get the sense that he is still competing with Conrad for her affections. And so in some ways, it feels like he's only into this wedding because he wants to win. He wants to win kind of that battle from the beginning where she gets mad at him about sleeping with another girl to like prove to her that he loves her. But it's like, I don't get the sense that he actually wants to marry her, that he's ready to marry her. And she's frustrated about it, but she doesn't do anything about it. She does mention it to him a couple times, but then she just lets things slide. And Belly needs to take a stand, and she never does. They start reconnecting, and then Conrad, who is incredibly sensible, is like, I need to pull back. So they have this push and this pull, and then Jeremiah shows up, and he's all jealous. Belly is beginning to question more and more this wedding, while at the same time being adamant about having it. And so now it's like, she's only wanting to get married to prove point. I couldn't remember much of this book. Like, I knew how it was going to end, but I couldn't remember how it was going to end, like who was going to break it off. Conrad admits his feelings to Belly. She then is honest with Jeremiah about, it's like the day before her wedding, and she wakes him up and she's like, look, Conrad told me he loves me. Then Jeremiah reveals that he knows that, I don't know, the Christmas before last or something, she had spent Christmas or a couple days during Christmas with Conrad at the beach house. It was purely coincidental. We had gotten that scene, and to me, I did not see it as something that Jeremiah should feel threatened by, except that he's obviously very insecure. Yeah, she didn't tell him about it, which she should have given their past, but to me, his reaction felt very overblown considering he slept with another girl. All she did was like spend 2 days in a cold house with his brother. It's apples and oranges here, so he, in my opinion, had no leg to stand on. He disappears. Nobody knows where he's gone, and I'm just like, is this the moment where he breaks it off with her? Because I could have sworn she broke it off with him. I was kind of upset that he was going to be the one to break it off because Belly needed to be the one to break it off. This is her story. This is her character growth. She needs to be the one to grow set and do the deed. Conrad finds him. But before Conrad goes to look for him, Belly's mom gives him a letter that his mother had written to Jeremiah for his wedding day. She also gives one to Belly, who cannot bring herself to read it until she knows if Jeremiah is coming back. Conrad finds him, gives him the letter. Jeremiah gets upset. He gives the letter back to Conrad, and he's like, this is meant for you. Turns out that it actually was meant for Conrad, and the excuse given is that, I guess it was in the envelope marked Jeremiah, but the excuse is that the mother must have been so sick that she hadn't realized that she put the wrong letter in the wrong envelope. Essentially, it's, I guess I don't even remember verbatim, but I think it was like Susanna believed that Conrad would marry Belly, even though Belly's letter was not specific to either one of Susanna's boys, even though the very first book, that's exactly what Susanna says, is that she knows Belly is going to marry one of her boys. And when Jeremiah gets back, it's not that Belly even breaks up with him, it's just they agree that they shouldn't get married. And on some level, it's really Jeremiah who makes the decision, because he says, look, I want to marry you, even though me, personally, I'm like, I really don't think you do. And he's like, but I will marry you on one condition. If you can tell me, if you can look me in the eye and tell me that you don't love my brother. And she's honest with him, and she says, well, of course I love him, but I will always love him. There will always be a part of my heart, like that childhood, that girlhood part of my heart that will love him. But it's a very different love than I have for you. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't really believe this at all. Like, good try, Jenny Han, but we know Belly loves Conrad, and she's lying to herself about Jeremiah. Jeremiah's like, that's not good enough for me. I want all or nothing. So he walks away. We get an epilogue. Belly is marrying somebody else a number of years later. She is very ambiguous about who it is, because it could be Jeremiah. You know, it's quite possible. She's like, we didn't talk for X amount of time. I didn't hear from him again until I did the study abroad. And he wrote me letters all the time. Handwritten letters, not emails. He wrote me letters. I didn't actually see him until this point in time. We learned that she is actually marrying Conrad. Jeremiah is in a relationship with someone else. He had come to their wedding, and they got married at Cousins. They go swimming in the ocean, and there we go. We end. I was just disappointed by this book, if only because I expected more for Belly or from Belly. Han is a good enough writer. Like, one, she's very good at a statement sentence, at leaving us with a thought She does an exceptional job creating the drama and the push and the pull. And as I said, it's probably a much better book for someone younger than I because they want the drama. I do not want the drama. I want Belly to learn from her mistakes. I want Belly to see the truth for what it is. I want growth. Like, I want growth from the first book to this book, and I don't, because she didn't choose Conrad. She didn't not choose Jeremiah. So what did she learn throughout this entire series? Nothing, because she basically lied to herself this entire series. She could not figure out what she did and didn't want. And I get it. Like, when we can't get what we want, we lie to ourselves to make it easier. But that's not really the route we were going here. I wanted more of Conrad, as I had mentioned. It was nice for him to fill in some of the blanks, but I felt like he still withheld a lot of information. And even I wanted Conrad just to be so torn up about things. I really wanted his point of view, and we got some of his point of view, but it was largely tied up in events from the past, which, two things. My last review, I talked about Belly's best friend Taylor and how in the first book, we had gotten this little story about how Taylor had come to Cousins. It had been a terrible experience. Their friendship was never the same again. Then all of a sudden, they are BFFs in It's Not Summer Without You. And I was like, where did this come from? So We'll Always Have Summer opens up with them being BFFs again. And I was like, because I think they'd had another fight in It's Not Summer Without You. And I was just like, what's going on here? Like, I am not seeing where the disconnect becomes reconnected. But thankfully, Han fixed it here, where she eventually does give us retrospect onto how the girls repaired their relationship. We learn about the infinity necklace that Belly found in the last book, which I thought we needed in the last book because I kept thinking I missed something. I was like, did I zone out when we had our flashback about how she knew this infinity necklace was for her? The one that I was like, oh, it's actually for Aubrey or Audrey, whatever her name is, who is Conrad's first love, which I don't know. Like, in this book, he is confronted by a girl that he messes around with about whether he's ever been in love. And he said he's been in love once. And it was Belly. It was not Aubrey Audrey. It was Belly. So I'm like, what did Aubrey Audrey have anything to do with anything except to create a little bit more drama in the first and the second books? This whole retcon thing did not work for me. But what we learn is that this moment from Valentine's Day where he surprised her and they didn't do like the flowers and everything, but they laid out under the stars. This then comes into the infinity idea. And I was just like, well, thank you for finally explaining it to me, but you're a little late. I don't mind being strung along a little bit, but I needed that information in the last book. At least a little bit of explanation, some kind of allusion to this necklace and this idea of infinity. Maybe not explain the whole thing, but some kind of allusion to it. So that, okay, finally, we open it up here and I get the full story. We'll Always Have Summer had more potential than it delivered. Not a bad book, not a bad series, but I think at my age, I am now too old for this subject matter because it needed some more development, but for the key age group, it is fine. But what do you think about this trilogy? What do you think about Belly? Are you Team Conrad or are you Team Jeremiah? How do you feel about the way that it ended? I think by the end, my favorite character was Taylor. There we go, and I will see you next week. Bye.